It's my bad, y'all. I've been procrastinating. I have not been building this channel. It's for the 10 subscribers that are on there. Let's get this count up. Got some good, got some good stuff that I'm gonna have on here. Ought to be educational on my way in. I like to think that I'm an objective. I see things from an objective view, something that's very rare and treasured here in this day of age. So I'm gonna get back to posting on this channel and building this up. Just been focusing, been busy, and working hard, trying to build my career. But definitely gotta find time and cut out time to post some good content on here. So further ado, go get to it, man. Y'all seen what's been going on with the whole election process, whole sideshow. It's just a whole circus monkey show. They had the election Tuesday. There's been a lot going on. Trump, Biden took a lot of the states. Then a lot of the states that were going red all of a sudden turned to blue states in favor of Biden. So Biden took the popular vote in the Electoral College, according to the media. Hasn't been officially stated by it hasn't been officially stated. And even within that, I think a lot of people don't even know that the real election takes place late December. Pretty sure there's a few people know. Our process, the process that you see us do, that you see the U.S. take part of every first Tuesday of November. That's the, so to say. Sorry, I'm driving. But that's just voting for the electors, the Electoral College, as everybody knows. But there's the electors, the people who are going to vote in the president. Then the electors get together and they cast their ballots. That's held in late December. And then they'll tally them all up and they'll come together on, I believe, January 6th, somewhere around that time frame. And then they'll tally up all those ballots and they'll officially announce who the new president of the United States is. Now, one thing that people should know is that the Electoral College, they're not, in many states, not going to say, but I'd probably say about half the states here in America, they're not binded by any laws or rules that keep them from being faithless electors. Meaning, if they choose, if the state chooses Joe Biden, and the elector, an elector within, that college, the group of electors decides that they want to go with Donald Trump, because what they do is they find electors that pledge that vote, that whoever the people chose for that state, and they'll find the electors that chose that president. But one of them, even the majority of them, could decide to go against that. And they all come together. It's about 435. I forget the number. I forget the number. It's about 538 total with state representatives, Senate, and House. It's 538 total. So you got a majority of them, and they decide that they want to cast their vote for, the other way. And they want to cast their vote for Trump. And it's well within their jurisdiction. And, that's where it gets decided at. But, Trump's saying, back to what we're dealing with in the media, Trump says that the ballots and votes are tampered with and it's voter fraud, and he wants a recount, which a lot of the states are doing. And that's politics. Do I believe there's voter fraud? Hell yeah, I believe there's voter fraud. I believe it happens on both sides, especially when you're talking about entities like the Democratic or Republican parties. Yeah, you're gonna have voter fraud. As much as they want to try to suppress it and talk about that, you're gonna have that. But like I said, you'd have to expect that from both sides. Both sides are gonna. Politics is a dirty, 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 dirty game. Dirty game. I mean, you see, it's pretty much a monopoly. Democrat and Republican. The independent parties, they don't get any exposure. They don't get any national exposure. You don't see them up there on the debate stage. So how can they even have a chance when it comes to the election? I mean, I think Libertarian Party got 1% of the vote this year. Yeah. What chance is there really? But that's the game. You got two parties that are engaged with the corporate big dogs. They have corporatism backing them, so they have a monopoly on everything, and they have a monopoly on everybody's minds. They have a monopoly on everybody's lazy people's information. For the ones who are going to go out there and dig and find stuff for themselves, it's going to be tough to trick them. But for the lazy people, I don't even want to say lazy people. Let's not say that. Because, a lot of people, they're just distracted. They have their everyday lives and trying to carve out a future for themselves and their offspring. So a lot of times, people just don't have time to even dig in the information. There's no time, especially with the way money works and the way inflation works, and it's got people being able to achieve less with their dollar as time goes on. You're gonna be working harder. So with that being said, there's a lot of different things that are gonna be missed. And so when you have a person like me that comes along and says, well, these guys you got two different sides that are basically playing the good cop, bad cop role, hero, villain, when in all actuality, man, both of them are basically advocating for the downfall of the U.S. citizen and liberty and sovereignty. It sounds far-fetched because, it just sounds like some people don't want to believe that, there's people in power that have these type of intentions like this. It's all about power to them. You should know power corrupts. They sit there and they quote the Constitution, but both sides clearly within their policies they'll violate the Constitution. Both sides, and I mean egregiously. Trump will you pick it. Trump will violate, First Amendment. He's all for violating the First Amendment. When you talk about advocate, because when it all comes down to it, it's on your local government and their enforcement of these policies and whatever influence the president may have. But still, having a president that's putting that influence out there, First Amendment. When you're talking about, curfews on protesters. People who are rioting, I'm completely against. They're burning down other people's personal properties, and they'll have everybody sitting in the soup kitchen line. That's what that's all about. That's why you have the other side. They're all for that. You get more people on socialism, which, all of America, Democrats and Republicans are both socialists. They both engage in socialism. One's just more extreme than the other. But if they can get more people latched to their titty, then hell, that works in their favor. They'll always have the more oppressed people, the more leverage the Democrat Party will have. But back to the other side, the Republican, they'll do things like that. Advocate, it's their First Amendment right. If you're on private property, that's one thing, but in public, for a person to be out there and voice and protest, they can do that all night. That's their right as a sovereign citizen, protected by the Constitution. If the Constitution is what they claim to say it is. Also, 10th Amendment violations by Trump. Sending the federal troops in against the state governor's request. You saw that going on. Or blindly advocating for every action that the police. I'm not saying everything that the police has done is been evil. There's a lot of things I've been like, what else was the police supposed to do in a lot of the situations that happened this year? Things like George Floyd and stuff like that, that was just egregious. But some other ones, it's like, it's not what they portray it to be within the media. But still, Trump will always lean more toward the police side. Aren't we supposed to be, especially when you're talking about being protected within our personal spaces, personal property, things like that? You got to give more benefit of the doubt to the citizen. Banning trans people. I'm not for that lifestyle, but they deserve to have all the rights. Now, if there's a stated reason, maybe something that I didn't look all the way, maybe there's a stated scientific reason. I don't know. There has to be a viable reason to why he would choose to do that. If it's just off of religious belief, you can't do that. It's supposed to be First Amendment. Once again, that's supposed to be separation of church and state. So as much as I don't agree with the lifestyle, I don't agree with anybody violating their rights and, them to be treated like any other human. Those are just a few of the things, Of course, he gets caught up in lies. There's a whole montage of him, lying and backtracking on different things. But the other side does it. We're just gonna get in. There's a lot of things both sides do. Let's get to the other side. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. Let's talk about them. Now that side, I call them the most deceptive side. Those Republicans, they pretty much tell you, they pretty much show you that they don't give a shit. on a lot of things, especially when it comes to, black issues. And they show you, they tell you blatantly they don't give a damn. Sometimes, they may reserve the right. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all racist. There's racist entities within the parties, but there's a lot of racist entities on the other side also. Think about Senator Robert Byrd. I know he apologized, but did he make everything right? He had a high-ranking position in the KKK and actually got his position within the Senate because of how well he did. You think he relinquished that? That's the problem when, we got all these guys and they say, oh, I'm sorry. And, you got white folks that, say, they want to apologize for, the past. I mean, if you're really sorry, you make it right. Under the context of the situation. I'm not arguing whether it happened, whether what's real or what's not and all that. Under the context of the situation, make it right then. They won't do that. It's just like Max Kellerman said on ESPN. Y'all invite him to the cookout, but he's not gonna. He believes in white privilege, but he's not gonna give up his white privilege. So let me not get sidetracked. Democratic Party, guys like Joe Biden and a lot of their cult following, they always position themselves like they're on the side of justice and doing what's right. And they're the good guys and they actually care for you. We're here for you. We hear your pain. I'm gonna show you where I'm going in a little while. Just sit tight. Listen to me. They claim to be against, they want to, be for the citizen. But like I said before, they can't function if there's no oppression. And they receive corporate money too. They receive corporate money. Think about all the stuff that happened with the George Floyd situation in BLM. You go on BLM's website, and I haven't been on there in a while, but last time I checked, when you go to the donate area, and see where the donations go to. And look at one of the organizations under Act Blue. They're also in bed with the Ford Foundation. Look up the history of the Ford Foundation. They split from Ford, the automotive company, but they come from the same roots, and they have. Just look them up. That's all I'll say. Just look them up. But Act Blue is strictly donations for the Democratic Party. Back to Act Blue, where those donations go to. This funds the Democratic Party. And if you look at the funds that the Democratic Party received within that time, they were record numbers. It was astronomical how much funding they received. And so you wonder how they're able to, like I said, it's another way that those entities are able, they deal with corporate entities, and they have to serve, the politicians that are put forward. They have basically a pact with those corporate owners that, they have to do their bidding. That's how they get paid. That's where their money comes from. But let's talk about the constitutional/human rights. Let's just deal with the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights is the main thing that people need to be focused on. We talked about how the Republicans and how they violate? What do the Democrats violate? Aren't they supposed to be for human rights, civil rights? They're not. They're the furthest thing from it. Well, as far as, let's just go off the top. And I may not cover everything, but let's just get to the meat of everything. Remember, where we're going is we're going to lead to something that's called color of law. Democrats, when it comes to things like the First Amendment, they're advocates of it on platforms. They're advocates of it through the media, through the education. They'll advocate for somebody to be censored. Now, they won't, as far as off the top of my head, and I could be wrong, but they won't seem to put any legislation, but they're definitely advocates for it. They'll deal with the media monopoly and anything that doesn't go with their agenda. They're quick to try to debunk something and call it, a lie or, this and that. Well, how do we know? The Democrats, they depend on people, who don't have time to do research. They depend on that type of person. You're not going to do research, so you're not even going to verify the different things that they say, that they try to label as truth or lie. They depend on that. And they do it continuously. Because they're the good guys. They'll always be positioned as the good guys, so people will give them the benefit of the doubt. But you'll see that they'll push for, and people follow them. They'll push for censorship, and I've seen people talking about screw free speech. These people and their rhetoric and this and that. I don't care what type of rhetoric you have, unless it's directly advocating for physical harm toward a person directly. And I mean directly, meaning not philosophical, saying that could potential, because it gets tricky in that gray area that has potential for, physical harm or things like that. I'm talking about direct. Unless it has that, a person has free speech. They want to delete everybody. They want to label everything as a lie. Intelligent people know that the truth fears no scrutiny. All you got to do is put the truth out there and let the people decide. Put the information and let the people decide, right? Which I'm going to do in a little while. But they don't want that. They are all for censorship on platforms. And it gets tricky right there, but the platform has the right. Platform has the right to put whatever type of agenda, however they want to feel that they want to educate a person. The platform has their right, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. The owners of that platform, they own it, so they can do what they want to do. That's what liberty is all about. As much as I disagree with it, as much as I hate it, still have to call everything objectively and right down the middle, and I have to be fair. But therefore censorship. So that shows a moral problem with them and their cult. Also personal property. Personal property. I mean, think about it. All this year, all the the COVID, not the, I don't even want to say it because I know YouTube's funny, but the C-19. I mean, think about it. We won't even get into the, we all know what's happened this year. Shutdowns, mask mandates. But you're telling people it's all, it's one thing to advocate and educate and put out, promote it. That's one thing. But to put a mandate, unless a business received a federal funding or something and agreed to a certain level of terms, you're talking about people that built from the ground up on their own, with their own blood, sweat, and tears, and acquired their own personal property for their own commerce. And you're telling them, dictating how, what they do and how they run their business, and telling them when they can, and if they don't comply, you'll impose fines. That's a violation of the Fourth Amendment right. The Bill of Rights were put there to protect against tyranny, to close the door, to hold your politicians at bay, to where they could never usurp the citizen. I mean, think about it. Where did this virus? There, I said it again. YouTube might be screwing me, but where did this C-19 even come from? There's been much speculation, but where did it come from? We do know that, and it's proven. All you got to do is go in, do a search on actual chemical warfare and actual times that the government has, against the will of a person, performed different experimentation without consent, unconsented experimentation. Look that up. You'll be surprised. And I'm talking about things, not conspiracy, things that are confirmed. You will be surprised at what you find. And then think about what's going on now. You don't know where this could come from. This could be biological warfare. Black people think about it like this. You talk about, a lot of people within the last year or so learned about Black Wall Street. And they have ambitions about creating another Black Wall Street. If that's their ambition, they won't need bombs. They won't need bombs or anything to take your power away from you and crumble you economically. All they got to do is release something within the atmosphere and make you comply against your will and crumble your economy. And you got so many people talking about just comply and do what they say so we can slow the curve and this and that. And I mean, the way that whole conversation has been perpetuated in the first place, completely wrong. The whole argument that's been in the media, the health of the citizens versus the economy, both have valid points when you're talking about that. But the one thing that was completely omitted from the argument in the conversation was the topic of where it stands as a human rights issue. And you got none of that. They talked about none of that. They left it at economy versus health. We've seen the damage that it's done economically. There's many businesses, put them out of business for them to, a lot of them are never even going to come back. Health side, you're talking about something that's got a 99% survival rate, but you don't even, that shouldn't even be brought up. That doesn't even need to be brought up, because you're talking about human rights. It really wouldn't matter if there was a 1% survival rate. So none of those numbers would matter. None of those would matter. It's built to protect tyranny, so there won't be any workaround or something. There would always be a call for necessity to violate these certain things. Always be a call for some necessity. That's what they're there for. That's why when it was taken to the Supreme Court in Philadelphia and Michigan, the Supreme Court ruled that those mandates were unconstitutional. They were violations. Don't even get me started on 2A rights. You know, that's to defend yourself. You know, the people as a militia, their own sovereign military. But both sides have perpetuated that. You know, Democrats more egregious than the Republicans, but you know, Donald Trump's the one who introduced the bump stock ban after the Vegas shooting. And that's something, you know, even when it comes to those mass shootings and everything, that's something that has to be examined within itself. You know, has anybody individually ever taken a look at, you know, things like MK Ultra? That's an actual MK Ultra mind control. That's an actual tactic. It's listed within the Army. You can go on the Army website, military website, and see that. There's a lot of history behind that. A lot of people have been through that program. Marilyn Manson was allegedly sent through that program. It's a process. Seems far-fetched, but these are things you look into. Back to the personal property. I don't want to bounce around, but I just want to, you know, pinpoint these different things. Even when you get to the violation of the Fifth Amendment, because if you are to come to an agreement, let's say, you know, they come with a good reason and they agree to the person agrees to shut down their business. Well, according to that Fifth Amendment, the same where you plead the Fifth, you don't have to incriminate yourself in the court of law. It also says at the end of that Fifth Amendment that if they have to seize any property or do anything like that, like they've done during these lockdowns, that the owner of that property has to be properly compensated. Did you see any of that? No. You saw business loans, you know, loaning money, and they have to do something with the money under the conditions that it was loaned from by the federal government, but that's not compensation. They also violate the 10th Amendment just like Trump does by making federal mandates. Against the state's wishes or pushing for it. Just like Joe Biden said, if he were to be elected as president, he will institute a mandatory mask mandate. And a lot of people just think it's something as small as a mask is something arbitrary. No, it starts with things like that. Because then next they'll be telling you, you've seen all the things about the vaccinations. Next they'll be telling you you can't go enter this grocery store without papers that show you've been vaccinated, while forcing the owner of that store to comply with that instead of giving people the choice, letting the owners make their decision whether they want to make that their criteria for you to enter their store, or whether an owner wants to decide they don't want to participate in that, and that'll give the other people who don't want to participate that an option, a place to shop at, instead of making something mandatory. These are human beings who are just as flawed as me and you. They are not gods. So they will make... You don't know what's in the heart of these people either. And that's what these laws, these rights, Bill of Rights are there to protect you from. Now, I'm going to put it on the screen. I'm going to show y'all. Something. It's called the Deprivation of Rights Under the Color of Law. 28 USC Section 242. It's an extremely punishable offense, and depending on the severity of it and who's hurt by it, meaning police force, which is usually pretty much all the time how these laws are enforced, through police force. The governor could face punishment depending on the severity of it, of the violation. I mean, it literally says it right there in your law book. Deprivation of rights under the color of law. It's under civil rights. I'll post it on there. When I do the editing, you'll see it. Straight from the FBI page. Straight from the FBI page, straight from the Department of Justice page. This is a civil rights violation under the color of law. It even explains color of law as simply any action given to an authority on the local, federal, the state level. That's simple. So the question you should be asking is, why don't they ever talk about this? Why don't you know this? I mean, was it something you skipped in school? I can't speak on what, the education is, because you got I know they're not teaching it in public schools. Private schools, that's up to the person that's, private charter, that's up to the person that's running the curriculum. So you got to ask yourself, how come you don't know this? How come they don't speak of this when they're, these politicians speak of this when they're talking about constitutional rights? They only bring it up when it comes to whatever agenda or what side that they want to defend or push. But you didn't know these. A lot of people don't even understand this. Bill of Rights. The black people have been, they've been so dejected by history, the telling of history, that, a lot of people, and this is just from experience, a lot of people I know, when you first ask them about the Constitution or stuff like that, they don't believe it applies to them. They believe it's not for them. My response to that is, then no law should be for you then. If that were the case, what would be the point of fighting any law on the law book if there's no point of fighting the supreme law, the one that keeps you free? Laws are nothing but contracts, agreements on how to move between citizen and government. So what would be the point of even fighting for state laws, police, criminal reform, how taxes and different things are going to be allocated? What would be the point of even fighting for that if the Constitution, Bill of Rights don't matter? A lot of people don't even, like I said, a lot of people don't even understand the meaning of it and what it's utilized for. Simply to protect against tyranny. But your politicians aren't going to tell you that. These are people who, you didn't hear this from them. You should ask them why they never talked about this. When you address them, when you get a chance to, if you ever get a chance to talk to them about these people that you love so much, see if they'll talk to you. And ask them these questions and and just view their response. But that's the problem, you know. It hasn't even been asked. The question hasn't even been posed. I've talked to police officers, people in council, city council. They seem to not even understand this. They weren't even aware of these different provisions. That's what you gotta ask. Why don't they talk about this on mainstream media? These people are supposed to be your friends. It's supposed to be the truth, and everything else should be censored. I mean, these are serious offenses. These are serious offenses. You can basically call it treason. And both sides are in violation. Both sides are in violation. So, analyze this video. Take a look at it yourself. Like I said, the different documents will be posted in the images that you see on the screen. Go to the sites, Department of Justice, FBI, Cornell Law. Go to those sites and see for yourself. And then, like I said, then wonder, if they're not telling you this, what would be their reason? Is there an ulterior motive? Or did they just, coincidentally forget? President after president after president. They just coincidentally don't know, but they don't know these things, but they take a position, the most important position, quote unquote, in the country. That's all I got today. Stay tuned for more. All right.